Yeah. Oh, DC-10s. Those are safe. Yeah. Greetings, Justin. Good, how are you? Wildfires aren't here. Sexy polio shirt. That's right. Got that. Is my cack still red? Oh, yeah. Just quoting from the masterpiece film, FDR, American Badass. Oh, I would recommend this. It was a few years before. For some reason. I didn't feel like it was either. I didn't feel like it was either. I feel like this was on.
Would you just push the button?
Right. Yeah.
Converting it all
Yeah, you look good.
You said that I could never feel. You said my heart was made of steel. I had to win you back, and I think I won.
You are listening to a machine. Do the world a favor and don't act like it.
You're the reason why the sky is black.
Your aces last
You're the reason for the nuclear attack. It's because of you. They all had to die.
I'll get back to
Because
you.
you asked me to. I dedicate this mushroom plant to you. I pushed the button and blew it sky high. You're the reason why the sky is black. You're the reason for the nuclear attack. It's because of you.
Hello and welcome to Tangents. I am Andrew and I am from the internet. With me tonight are other internet folk. Let's introduce ourselves. Justin, how are you tonight?
I'm well. It is a nice, balmy 80 degrees here in Chicago, and living my best life. How about you?
I'm still doing well. I'm glad that you're balmy. It's a balmy 72 here. But in the studio, it's about 61.
I'm familiar with this differential.
Yes. Ick Studios, where your nipples are perpetually hard.
Sounds like a winner.
Speaking of perpetually hard nipples, Christoph, welcome back to your lair.
It's good to be back in beautiful Spitsylvania.
Yeah. How are you, sir?
I'm doing well. I'm exhausted from traveling, but I'm excited to be on tangents.
We're always excited to have you as well.
I'm all full of tangents, and I can't wait to go off on them.
Oh my God. Just remember, if you have tangents lasting more than 2 hours, consult your physician.
Ask your medical provider if tangents is right for you.
They will say it's not.
Not right for anybody.
No.
And if you see the tangent sales rep leaving your doctor's office, don't be alarmed. Right?
It's okay. No, it's not. No, it never is. Robin.
4 out of 5 doctors recommend tangents to their patients who chew tangents.
Tangents?
Sure, why not?
Okay. I mean, I'm not going to judge.
Nothing to see here. Move along.
All right. Womber has a leaky tangent.
Yikes.
Robin, we have not seen you in forever.
Yeah, work and swords have been keeping busy, or that and cluster headaches. But no, doing all right
Yeah?
otherwise.
Well, what's new and exciting?
Honestly, not a whole lot. The summer's been definitely brutal. It's like I'm reminded that I thought I lived up north and the Northeast to avoid hot summers, and we've been oppressively sitting at 90+ degree weather for the last couple weeks, and I'm just I don't want to go anywhere except air conditioning.
Yeah, I'm surprised that that area in New England is as swampy as it is right now.
Oh, it's
We got the
disgusting.
humidity.
It's the worst it's been
Yeah.
in decades.
Ugh, gross. And speaking of swamp ass, Jeff, how are you?
Also swampy. The heat index was 108 here yesterday.
Yeah.
So, no, I'm doing well. Things are good. I went to the beach last week, and I am reminded every time that I go places I have 3 children, and I am reminded that when you have children, you take trips, not vacations. And so I took a trip to the beach last week.
Very
And
good.
also it was hot.
And I bet
no,
the
it's-
kids loved it.
They did. Children actually don't feel temperature. My youngest is 7, and he will go outside. It's like 12 degrees, and he's like, shorts and t-shirt, this is fine. And then he's got like a hoodie with a bear on. It's like 98 degrees outside. The summer, did you not notice? It's like, yeah, he's got a bear on it. Didn't you see?
Oh my God.
All right. Well, I mean, it's on assailable logic. I guess it's got a bear on it. So, yeah, no, but it was good. And then otherwise, I've just been hanging out playing some music a little bit here and there, and just chilling.
That's cool. That's cool.
Yeah.
Very good. Robin and I played an 808 thing this past weekend. Separately.
Did.
Because Robin would never come to the city. She's
That's
like,
not
"Fuck
true."
Cleveland."
If the weather was better than it was here, I
It's-
would have considered
it's,
it.
you know, I'm just letting you know that we've got tomorrow is going to be 75. Next couple days,
Actually,
you know, we've
nice.
got this nice breeze coming off of this great lake we have.
Tomorrow in New York,
Great
it's
luck.
only going to be 75,000.
Toasty and stinking of humanity. So, it's not much news this week.
It's the
Nope,
dog
some-
days of
It
summer.
really is. And part of
Like the
me,
biggest, most exciting thing is probably, and it's not in our news items, is whatever Cherry Audio is trying to drum up excitement for,
oh yeah,
and that's just a rumor,
yeah, we generally don't report on rumors.
and that's why it's not in our news tonight.
Indeed.
Where are they teasing this stuff?
Because we deal in facts. They've been teasing on their social media. They had a modification of a Close Encounters image, which would make you think ARP 2600.
Yep.
But they did another one with an 8, and the backing graphics look like the old Synthex Elka.
Oh,
So who knows what it's going to be? But probably that some other people thought it might be the Voyetra 8.
Mm-hmm.
oh, right.
I would have to buy it if it were. I keep looking at those things online, and like every once in a while, one pops up, and they're just so expensive.
Yeah, and as you know, personally, not insanely reliable.
No, not super reliable.
Since we can go off on a tangent, you want to tell the story about how I never got to hear one?
I used to work for Turtle Beach. Turtle Beach is currently a gaming headset company. Before Turtle Beach was a gaming headset company, it was like an audio interface and computer audio software company. And before that, it was a synthesizer company known as Voyetra. And before that, it was a synthesizer company known as Octave. And so Carmine Bonanno, the founder and long-term CEO of the company, made the cat, the
I
Octave
was gonna say
cat,
cat, yeah.
and then also the Voyetra 8, and a bunch of other synthesizers. But the Voyetra 8 is like bonkers good. It is a crazy powerful, very amazing sounding synthesizer, and now they go for like 20, 30 grand sometimes, depending on like what condition they're in. And so when I was working there, one of the other employees who'd been a long time Turtle Beach employee had one from one of the original ones. He'd worked at Turtle Beach since they made the thing, and he let me borrow it, which is very cool of him. And I took it home. Christoph came over, and Tony Gustin. Is Tony Gustin on? Tony Gustin came over. We set it up. We connected things. We pushed the buttons. We turned it on, and then it went pop.
Oh, gosh.
And we were like, that's a really good drum sound it made. And that was the sound of a capacitor going. So we never got to do anything with it because when we turned it on, the capacitor and capacitor, and it went out.
Wow.
And that was a very sad story. But
So, yeah, I think Tony got there first, and you guys turned it on because by the time I got in, it was already dead.
okay, so Tony and I pushed like
You got to hear it make the one sound.
we made it go, and I think we got like an init patch because the patch storage was like, I think the patch storage on them uses like one of the watch batteries or something, for keeping itself alive.
Mm-hmm.
And the watch battery had died 73 years prior. And so I think we wound up with like an init patch with a saw wave or something and just got a bzzz out of it, and then it went pop. It was awesome. And I felt like a criminal taking it back to Strati, who is very understanding. Like, I mean, he had worked in he was the head of tech support at Turtle Beach for that time, and had been the long-term head of tech support, including during the Voyager days. So I mean, it wasn't like a big, shocking, horrible. It was a frustrating thing, but it wasn't like a big deal type of a thing. But I felt like a criminal going back and be like, I think your capacitor blew in the synthesizer. It doesn't work. I don't know what to go do. Here it is. So there you have it. That's my Voyager trade story. But I would love
Thanks,
to have
guys.
one. I would love to have a cat too. Carmine was very cool. I have a lot of fond memories of Carmine.
Nice.
That Turtle Beach car that Noise Theorem had, was that the Quattro?
The card, the sound card.
So Noise Theorem is mentioning that he had one of the first Turtle Beach
The
cards.
first consumer
I think the
accessible
first
multi-track sound cards.
Yeah, I think that was the Turtle Beach Quattro. Is that right? So my
Could-
first high quality sound card was the Turtle Beach Tropez, which was a Sound Blaster knockoff.
Yep.
Got it with 4 mega RAM, and I liked it and I had good software with it, but it was a huge mistake. I should have gotten the Sound Blaster R32, which
Oh,
I
yeah.
eventually got later and was absolutely incredible.
Yep.
For
They
the
did,
time.
they really got their success by getting in with Dell and getting to be the OEM manufacturer's sound card with Dell for a long time. But then, of course, sound cards went on to the motherboard. Business
And that
just got,
wiped out that whole business.
yeah. But they made what was the software they made? The Voyager. It was like a MIDI.
Yeah, they had their I don't remember what it was.
God, it was really good.
Yeah.
Made a ton of really cool stuff though. So it's an interesting company that had an interesting history, and now they're
It
so
was Voyager MIDI Orchestrator.
yeah.
Oh, I've heard of that.
Right.
Mhm.
Carmine was there for a long time, man. I think they started the company in '75, and I left there in 2012-ish. I guess it was. I've known you for a long time, Christoph.
Yep.
But yeah, so it was interesting history. But now, I mean, Carmine's gone. I think most of the original folks are pretty much out of there at this point. They're doing gaming headsets, and I think they're doing pretty okay. But I like the synthesizers and sound cards.
I was just looking up to see what Sound Blaster, if they still existed. I'm surprised that they still do.
Noise Theorem says, wasn't Opcode also spun off from them? I'm not sure. Like I said, I left in like 2012. I was there for like 5 years. Maybe it was. I guess it would have been 2013. I would have probably left. Yeah, I was there for.
I don't think so.
Opcode was founded in 1985 by David Oppenheim, based in Palo
Yeah.
Alto, California, according to the wealth of all knowledge that is Wikipedia.
No, it's got to
Of
be true
course,
then.
it does mention about penises in here somewhere.
Yeah, from
So-
Mars.
You do.
Opcode was the first time that a company bought, for me, where a company bought the company making my MIDI interface and refused to release updated drivers for it, making it a paperweight.
Oh,
Something that's happened to me time and time again.
I was going to
So
say, I like
this time, the villain wasn't Apple, it was Gibson. But every other time, it's
Yeah.
Apple.
yeah. Well, we got to keep you on your toes,
Yeah. It'll teach me a lesson for buying something.
right?
And I guess that brings us to our other news story where I did not get the Core GOP 6.
Yeah. I'm sorry you missed out
Well,
on
I
that.
fucked up. Yep. So I thought that would be around. I was like, I know I shouldn't buy another synth, so I waited. And then I was like, yeah, I'm going to get it. And then, boop, too late.
Now, I know Noise Theorems just got his today, so hopefully it's in working condition, because I heard that a few of them had some bad screens.
Yeah, I've been reading. I've been keeping a track of the Reddits of that. Either people have been having that. I'm supposed. Well, in theory, also because FedEx sucks in terms of any type of timeline. In theory, I should have gotten mine today.
Of course.
It's not here yet. So hopefully the next day or two, I'll get to test out does the screen
the
actually
other reason
work or
why you're
not.
on here tonight is because your Op 6 didn't show up. You're
right.
like,
Otherwise,
oh,
I would have totally
fuck you
skipped
all.
out on
Hey, guys,
this
I
and
got a
just been like,
headache. You know.
update the firmware now.
Womber's asking in chat, did they stop making it? I don't know that they did
They did.
stop making it. My guy that I talked to at Sweetwater did not indicate that they stopped making it because I had a chat about it. And then it's also, it's still on their website as new.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it is a new product, but it also says it won't be available again.
And where does
And it
get
looks
that?
like what happened is they just weren't moving them, and it cost too much to store them.
Yeah,
So they blew out their warehouse.
that could be.
Because I understand, because it's just FM synthesis is not a sexy synthesis, and it's not for everybody. And I guess they made too many of them. And for me, my guess is the unit just cost too much, and it was not an attractive price point for what it is, because
Well-
it's not a bread and butter synth.
Well, Korg also decided to compete against himself by releasing software versions. So
Yeah.
both-
That was what I
Yeah,
was
they
gonna say.
did kind of screw themselves there too. So,
I mean, I would love the Op6 if I had any more goddamn room for anything other than like a little game controller in this room, and I would probably get one. But I do like the software. When I was working with the WaveState, I did notice I did some A/B testing between the software and the hardware, and like I said, I'm not correcting for all other intermediary cables and devices, but I do think the hardware sounded marginally better, at least in that device.
Yeah, Woody P.
and it
Chat.
could another advantage of the hardware is just it's not going to tax your computer at all.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
That's one of the appeals for me.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, just you're buying it for the interface, to be able
Yeah.
to twist multiple knobs at once without having to map a controller to it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it wasn't worth it at its original price point, but at $330, hell yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's a no-brainer at that point.
Yeah. So if anybody gets one and decides, I hate this and it works, I will totally buy it from you.
For that price.
Okay, I'll write that down.
I immediately checked Reverb
And I'll give you a lap dance.
to see if Reverb was inflating. You know how they do as soon as Korg sort of announced. But it seems pretty stable. But I do think the used price might be slightly inflated because the parity with the new ones is still kind of
Yeah.
weird.
Yeah.
So Wambra, to catch you up here on last week's news, Korg decided that they were going to dump the Op6, and they were selling them for, was it $399 or $299?
It was $329, I think.
Yeah, $329.
Yeah,
And
They had said it's $379, and then when you went to the site, it was $329.
and so they blew out them right out of their warehouse, and now they're gone.
Yeah.
And you did not have like 2 days to think about
Yes.
it, so it went quick.
No.
Yeah.
Well-
I think that Noise Theorem says that also the Op6, WaveState, and ModWave use 90% of the same parts. ModWave and WaveState are hits. Op6 isn't, and it's limiting their ability to produce the others.
Interesting.
I thought the WaveState was horrible.
I've heard people do good things with it, but it might be an unpleasant synth to use.
Yeah.
Well, it sounds bloody gorgeous. It's just like, how should I put this? Like, I feel like with the Op6, they sort of came up with some creative ways to approach FM synthesis from a UI perspective.
That's always
I
its
think-
weakest spot.
Yeah, well, if that's weak, I mean, the menu diviness of the WaveState was just too
Yeah.
much. I mean, even
And just speaking of
considering,
FM, the weak spot of FM is always the interface.
Right.
sure,
And this is probably the best hardware interface for FM ever.
Absolutely.
yeah, sure.
So,
I mean,
but
I
it
had to
still didn't
stop-
crack into audiences.
I had a DX7 for like 20 years, and as much as I complain about its interface, it was still better than the WaveState. that's how bad
Yeah.
it is.
Wow.
And the DX7 is just like a lot of like going back and forth and back and forth and back and forth and back and forth too.
Yeah.
You
The
get
WaveState's interface was confusing. It was menu divey as hell, unless you were just wanting to play presets. They released it, and it clearly wasn't ready for prime time. It didn't take a couple of software updates before the thing was actually ready to be used. And it was just, if you wanted to really dig into it, you had to use the software librarian. That's all there was to it. the software
that
editor, and I don't want to do that.
But the editor looks just like the software, right?
Yeah.
And that's the goofy
Right.
part, like.
If you have to tie yourself so much to the software, why not just tie the
Exactly,
software?
exactly. And I hate when companies do that. We're just like, we're just gonna release a software editor for this thing. Like, no, I just want to fucking use your synth without having to sit in front of a computer.
You know who hobbles stuff, and I hate to bring them up because I love this company, but Moog used to do that, and they did it with the Minotaur, and I really hated that. Where they were like, wouldn't you like to be able to use these functions? Here's our crappy editor, And I'm like,
And the biggest red flag with all of that is the Nord modular. When you're reliant on a computer editor, it's like that synth is only as good as they update that editor to run on modern operating systems. And once they stop, that synth's a paperweight.
Yeah.
I mean, people love the Nord modular, but you can't run it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And also like
I own
the DSI Tetra and the Mofo were also like that too.
Yeah.
Incredibly powerful, tiny little synthesizers with almost no interface on it whatsoever, and unless you had decide to download the shit ass editor.
I bought I have the Mofo keyboard,
Right.
The little mini keyboard,
Which was better.
and I know, way better. I love it so much because it's got the replacement pots on it and the replacement caps that I'll probably never part with it, even though it's literally sitting on my overflow shelf. But I have a lot of love for that
Yeah.
synth. But yeah, you're absolutely right. That was a weird design choice for sure, right?
Yeah. But I mean, they're fantastic sounding synths. I got rid of the Mofo, but I saw the Tetra. And it's the nice thing about the Tetra is you can plug it into the Prophet 6 and you can use it as an extra, 4 voices on the Prophet.
Weren't you doing that? Didn't you have the Mofo times 4 or something?
Yeah, I had a Mofo
Mofo
X4, and then I was using that with the Tetra. But
yeah, because it has a polychain cable right on the back.
The Prophet 6 has a polychain as well, so you can do the same thing.
That's so cool.
So yeah, I have a few synths that you can't edit without an editor. Like I have the Roland MVS1 and the JV1010, but they both came with one of the best synth editor that ever existed, Sound Diver, which was put out by a company named eMagic.
Yeah, I remember that.
But I can't remember what happened to eMagic.
I think that a greater company bought them out and made it so much better. And then in doing so,
By
made sure that they destroyed the Windows version. Because let's face it, you can't really do anything in Windows anyway. So fuck that program.
But they also don't release it for Mac.
No, they did. They've
So there's
improved
no
it, and they've
Sound
called it,
Diver.
and
It's
they built it into a new thing that's called Logic. Noise Theorem said that he disagrees with me, I should say, about the wave state. He's had it since release, and it's one of his favorite synths to program. He also says that FM is accidental synthesis unless you have a PhD or a clone of John Chowning. The best you can do is tweak and pray.
That is totally not true. And there's a YouTube channel I can recommend to you that will totally get your head around FM and make it really usable to you.
Yeah.
So I will find that and I'll send it to you.
I will say that I felt like FM was like relatively intractable. I don't know. I like math. Math makes sense to me generally. So like the ideas behind FM weren't like totally wackadoo to me, but I have the Op6 and I really like it, and it makes a lot more sense. Just like spending time with the Op6 makes it make a lot more sense.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I will say this about the wave state. If you had to program the original wave station or whatever, yeah, it's probably a huge improvement. But if you're used to just like any of those like serious menu divey, and I had plenty, especially rack mount menu divey pieces of gear in the 90s, I didn't mean to disparage the wave state in the sense that it is better than those things. It has a screen,
right?
It's readable, but I think it's just so powerful, and you can do so much with it. And I'm not even sure outside of software how you would do that without a touch screen, or I don't even know how else you would solve that problem, honestly. I feel like the Roland V-Synth tried to do that a little bit, and they had like a really weird touch screen, early touch screen. And And that was really the only way to do that and still have it sort of be visible.
Yeah, I don't know. It was not a fun experience. But that's not to say you shouldn't own one. Noise Theorem. I'm not trying to yuck your yum.
Well, I think they sound bloody great.
Yeah, they sound
I mean, that's
fantastic. I think my problem was I just didn't have the patience to sit there and really dive in to learn the programming process. I think it was just because I was a bit turned off by the A, how cheap it felt. And B, just kind of the whole, like the base interface of it was just kind of like, oh, wait, what the fuck does this even mean? It's just like, yeah, drove me a bit crazy.
Yeah, it's a common problem with Korg and Yamaha. Like, I have a few Korg things, and I know people that absolutely love the Korg Electribe workflow, and I absolutely hate it.
Yeah.
So for me, it's like I just want it to do what I want it to do, and I don't want to have to bend to its will. I just want it to do what I tell it. And it doesn't. You know, it's got like, you know, you don't assign which channels are going to be the choke groups. It tells you which ones are going to be the choke groups. You know, so it's like that kind of stuff's like, screw you. I'm just going to use content. So I only use the Korg ES1 just for sample, destruction, which it does really.
Oh, yeah.
So again, interface matters. And to Noise Theorem's point about FM programming, so you can get your head around it. You don't need to be a PhD. But what makes it so unsatisfying compared to analog, and I mention this a lot, is that, you've got really narrow windows on your parameters where it's like usable, and then like 1% usable and 99% noise for any slider. And that makes it really difficult. And, but I like what the Korg Up6, where it introduced other things you could do to the operators, like wave shaping and stuff like that. And that's unique, and that made me want one. Yeah, FM programming is hard, but it's not that hard, but it does take a lot more time than analog. And it is a lot easier to make just useless sound with FM than it is with analog. Like on the Jupiter 8 or the Prophet 5, no matter what you do with it, it's going to sound cool. You know, like no combination of sliders and knob positions is terrible. The way with FM, it's very easy to get unusable noise.
The good thing about that is that because the sweet spots are so narrow on FM, you're not left in this place where, sometimes with a subtractive synth, you're like, is it a little better here? Is it a little better there? And you're turning a knob like a degree, and then you're like, I don't know. FM, it's bad or it's good. It isn't like, it's a little better here. Nope. It is, as far as it's dumpster. You're in the dumpster. And then here it's the angels are singing, and you click back 1 degree, and you're on fire in the dumpster again. It's just, there's no questions.
Yeah.
It sounds so beautiful and ears bleeding.
Yeah.
All right, I'm sorry, Noise Theorem. I didn't realize that you knew FM. But I guess the other thing is it's kind of like a philosophy between like West Coast synthesis and East Coast synthesis. FM is great if you know like what you're trying to make and then you go about to make it. Whereas analog synthesis, you can just go on explorations and it'll take you down a rabbit hole, and you'll just wind up going somewhere completely different than you meant to go to. And, FM is much better for like, I've got an idea. I've got these like set of aesthetic rules that I'm going for, and here's how I'm going to actualize it.
It's more of like you're architecting your sound as opposed to exploring it and discovering it. Yeah. Well, it doesn't matter anyway because the OP6 is dead.
Yep, and I didn't get one.
And you didn't get one, and Robin did, and she's going to hold it over you for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully so. We'll see once it arrives.
Robin deserves to get it because she's got a job.
Well, there's actually another interesting thing that happened with all that, because whatever, it was hard to tell whether it's on, like, if you were getting it from Korg's warehouse on Reverb, like, the numbers of what was available kept, like, fluctuating. So at one point it would look like, oh, there's only 50 left, and then all of a sudden hundreds more were theoretically available. So a lot of people who didn't order, like, on the first day, but had originally got confirmation, then were notified that they weren't getting one. And one interesting thing that Reverb, I noticed Reverb did today that a lot of people were talking about in Reddit was that people were actually getting like $50 Reverb credits for those who had gone through that scenario. So, and I'm just like, that's interesting, because they probably thought it was not a good look for whether it was their fault or Korg's fault. It wasn't a very good look of, oh look, these are available, and there weren't
LOL,
any.
JK. Yeah.
PR, you know.
Yeah.
Thing.
Well, we tangented. We did it.
Yeah. There we went. We
All
so
right.
far half hour's been wasted. By not
Maybe we should
talking
cover
about
some
the
news.
Yeah, we can start on some news for a little bit, and I'm sure we're going to go off on some other tangents and stuff like that as well, as is our namesake. So we're going to start off this evening. The piece of news brought to us by Captain Jeffy Pants. Your new title.
Yep.
I should probably go into the fact that I did change the intro, our countdown. And the countdown visually is the same, but it is now playing random X Studios music releases. So if you are interested in finding out what the X Studios, which is not just me, but a label of compatriots and friends of mine and Justin's, you can tune in for the 10-minute countdown and hear a random smorgasbord of X Studios music. I did not put the Spooky Action at a Distance stuff on there because each of those songs is at least a half hour long, and it would be a little bit too much. But before we started, you did hear Plasma Blackout and Missile Command. So if you like that, you can check that out over at xstudios.net. And thanks for the business. Anyway, now that I have pimped, so Jeff,
You did it. You did it well,
thank you,
sir.
thank you. I do my best. Multi-device backward compatibility in the S2400. What do you know?
This is so. I kind of hate posting Instagram links, but sometimes it's the best thing. So this one that I just posted is a link to Brad, the head of Isla, doing just like talking about this. So one of the things that was initially promised for the S2400 was that it would, or I don't know, not promised, but suggested with the S2400 was backwards compatibility to read SP1200 files and songs and patterns, which are in their own weird format, and then also even to potentially read the discs. Now, the thing about reading the discs, which are 3.5s, is they're old.
Right.
They're IBM formatted. They're not Mac formatted. They're their own like weird whatever format thing. And most modern readers actually like literally can't even address the disc because the format of these old discs is it just looks like a blank or corrupted disc.
Yeah, I mean, it's not an IBM format either. It's its own format.
Right.
Yeah, that's
So
right.
nothing can read it.
So Isla's working on a couple of things. One of them is a firmware update that makes it so that they can, so that the S2400 is backwards compatible with a bunch of stuff. They didn't give the whole list, but it looks like it's going to be more than potentially just the SP1200. Like it's unclear exactly, but could be a bunch of stuff, like a bunch of old legacy things, which would be really cool. And then Brad's like working on hacking out some sort of new 3.5 floppy reader to read all these old discs. So
Wow.
I don't know what happens, but I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, no kidding. It might be one of the reasons why he bought all those old vintage synths as well, especially if he was, like Wombert just said, like the ASR-10, like if he started like doing like the
Yeah.
Ensoniq discs
Yes.
and stuff like that.
So that's the thing, exactly, Wombra. There's the possibility that it might do something like the ASR-10, and they're crazy responsive on their forum. So I don't know if there's any more S2400s available for pre-order. I actually almost ordered a second one.
For me, you shouldn't have. I know, right?
He didn't.
Funny how things work out like that. I was really close to ordering a second one. And I don't know that I won't still, but we'll see. So they've got some on pre-order at a crazy good deal.
Mm-hmm.
And if they keep making this thing better, man, it's just like, it's very, very good to begin with. Yeah, $14.99 on pre-order is how much they are. And it's very, very good
You've been having a lot of fun with it.
as it is right now.
Yeah.
Like it's
Yeah. No,
it's really
concur.
good.
I love it. I'd never get rid of it. It's wonderful. And it is cool because it's like a multi-tier thing. So if you want to dig deep into it, you can. If you want to be very surface level, you can. If you want to be halfway, you can. It's not like there's any kind of limitation to it. And I think that's cool.
Nice.
Yeah, it's very, very fun. But at $1,500, I don't know, like if you have any interest in an SP1200 or you just want a really good sampler, I mean, it wants to be either a drum machine or sort of like a hip hop sampler.
Mm-hmm.
You can do cycle waveform chromatic sampling on it. It doesn't love it. If you want to do more than like mono synth type sampling on it, it's probably not a great fit for you. You can do stuff with it, but I don't know. It's kind of wiggity. For a mono synth is good, but if you want a drum machine that's just like every drum machine and sounds amazing, it's $1,500 for it is a killer deal.
That's pretty. I mean, it's not. It's it's nothing to wink at, but it's not that expensive compared to some other things that have been out, that are out there that promise more and did less.
Well,
I'm not saying Tempest, but
yeah, I mean, this thing is more of a one-trick pony than the Tempest. But that being said, it does that one trick really, really, really
Right.
well, right? And I think that's
Yeah.
the caveat.
It's a lot more compelling than the current Rossum SP1200, which I love for the industrial design of it. But man, it just beats the pants off of it, and it sounds identical.
that's awesome.
Well, I can say that adding that ability to load old sample discs is one of those things that a lot of people won't use, but will be incredibly valuable to the people that will.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that just makes it worth so much more. So for anyone that wasn't using samplers 20 years ago, one of the hard things about a lot of the samplers before the S5000 is that almost everybody had a proprietary format to keep you locked into their ecosystem, and they would make it hard to go outside of that ecosystem. So Akai was the standard bearer. So almost everything would read Akai discs, but if you loaded up your Akai discs into your Ensoniq and then made something, the Akai wouldn't be able to read your Ensoniq discs.
They got Ensoniqed.
Yeah. So Kurzweil
Right.
could read a few, but Kurzweil just wrote in a standard DOS format.
Mhm.
So but it was only going to write it in a KRZ program, so you can't really load it. But at least you could store it on other medium and back it up.
Right.
And then use other translators.
Sure.
Like you can use. There was one called Chicken Sys, and there was A-Wave, and as long as you get the file, you could translate it to other formats or to a common format like SF2 or something else, and then translate it to what your sampler could read. But those disk formats was quite a nightmare, especially when they weren't in a standard like computer format. Like the weird thing about the Kurzweil is, although it read FAT32 disks, CD-ROMs it only read as a Mac format. So if you took a Kurzweil CD-ROM, put it in a PC, you couldn't view it. So yeah, so that's a really great functionality that they might be adding.
Yeah, I think one other sort of impedance mismatch that people probably have no comprehension of now is if you wanted anything of any length. I mean, I remember on my ASR10, it would be like 4 or 5 floppies.
Which was a long load time.
Each one was like a minute and a half load.
Yeah. It's funny
unless
because
you had an external SCSI, which is its own nightmare of termination and cabling.
Right.
Yeah, so I did that originally with an iOmega zip drive because I couldn't afford the SCSI drive. So
Until you got that click of death from your iOmega.
yeah. So then I had a real SCSI set up, and then since then I've abandoned all of it because I found a guy in the UK who makes SCSI to SD card interfaces for the ASR.
Oh, nice.
So
That's what I have on my S5000 is a SCSI micro SD.
it's the way to go.
Yep.
The problem is you still have to think about disk images because you're still dealing with old hardware. But if you can get over that, then you're in good shape.
The S5000 will read comedically up to 32 gigabyte disk images.
Nice.
So I have two 32 gigabyte disk images doing, which is like way more than enough. Way more than
That's
enough.
Yeah, I think Kai had a little bit more forethought maybe than Sonic did.
Yeah. The S5000 is also really good. If somebody wanted a vintage one, like I think if I wanted, I guess if I really wanted chromatic sampling at the 12-bit, I'd probably get the S900, but then you get into that weird format issue.
Mm-hmm.
But if you want a 12-bit drum machine, I would take the S2400 to the SP1200 all day long.
Yeah. Akai made so many great samplers and then sold them looking like medical equipment. And I don't really know how they...
Yeah, it didn't matter. They still sold
Yeah,
them.
they did.
Oh, they sold,
They
the
sold
shut
a ton of
ton
them, so yeah.
Yes, mine definitely looks like a heart rate monitor.
And at the time, it stood out because most of rack gear was black, but theirs, you knew where the Akais were.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I like stories. I think, Andrew, you told me a story about Information Society having a bunch of those on stage. And my favorite is the guys from Deep Forest who had literally a wall of these things to trigger some of those long samples that they
Yeah,
used.
Information Society had everyone was playing these old those old shitty Roland drum pads that just gave you arthritis all the time. And each of those had a tower of S3000s or S2000s, I think they were. It was just
cool.
so crazy if you think about how much each of those fucking things cost. They were about $2,000 a piece, weren't they?
They were not. They were
Yeah, they
expensive, and for that, if you adjust for inflation, that's a lot.
Yeah,
That's a lot of dough.
exactly. And then they had towers of this shit sitting there. And nowadays, you just have a fucking laptop and a broken dream, and you're all set. But it's just nuts.
Yeah.
Thinking about that, and they would tour with that shit.
Yeah, I mean, they got real popular in part because of the jungle and drum and bass music. Because a lot of those folks were using Ataris, frankly, and then just racks of samplers. Because they're just using the Ataris for MIDI control.
Yeah, it's just nuts. But yeah, I mean, I'm glad that they're doing this. I have a theory that the S2400, this floppy reader thing, I don't know if he's going to be manufacturing something like that, or if he's just going to set up a conversion thing that you can send him to your shitty discs and he'll convert them for you.
Could be, or Brad. So for anybody who doesn't know this, Brad's sort of rise to fame, claim to fame, whatever, was modding a bunch of old drum machines. That was his jam. He got kind of YouTube famous for modding drum machines and circuit bending them and doing crazy weird stuff to them. I also wouldn't be surprised if he didn't start to manufacture conversion kits and sell them with sort of DIY guides.
Nice.
That would be very much a Brad Holland sort of thing to do.
Yeah.
I love drum machine modders. Some of my favorites are the Roland 505 and the 707 mods, and the level of creativity that people put into that stuff. It's great.
Well, I can tell you that some of those old floppy disks aren't standard floppy disk interfaces.
Yeah.
So it's if you pull them out of those samplers and you say you tried to put them into a PC, they're not IDE, they're not MFM, they're just their own weird thing. So it's tricky, but it depends on which sampler. Some are using a standard component part, but some aren't.
Right.
Yep.
Cat's yelling at me.
Yeah, the ASR 10 uses the same ones actually that I think the Amigas used. So
Yeah.
I just hope he.
I could be
I hope
wrong
he
about
makes a converter for the S612 quick disc. Was that what those were called? Those were called quick discs on the Akai S612.
I can't remember.
There were little.
I
I've
don't
never
know.
actually seen one. I've read about the 612, and I remember having a chance to buy one for far too much money, but I've never actually seen one.
Oh God, it was the worst because the thing would take like a minute and a half to load, and it was of course like a 3-second sample. I think it was a quick disc. I'm looking it up right now because I know
Hey, you can buy them now for £6.95.
the quick disc or the sampler.
The quick disc.
Yeah, the quick disc. The thing is just like there was no protection on it, so like it was like the old like 5 1/4-inch floppies. So they were just like
Right.
people were were just like ruining these things like crazy.
Walking on the wild
I
side.
know, right? Holy shit! They want
Yeah, this-
$1,300 for one of these fucking things.
The S612.
Yeah.
Yeah, I found one on Reverb. Yeah, that sold a while ago. That sold for 400. So somebody must have worked their internet
Yeah,
magic to make it
I
expensive.
bought mine for $200, and I think I'd like threw in a pack of Camels.
Yeah.
Coincidentally, I've heard smart media now goes for a lot of money.
Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, it's crazy what gets trendy and then
You know it's not going for a lot of money right
What's
now?
that?
FMA.
The FM8? The deuce you say?
oh,
What's
Jeff.
that?
Tell me more. Back to
Jeff,
FM.
you segue like a boss, but you also reined us in. It was well done.
Yeah.
Well
Thank you,
played,
thank you.
sir.
Christoph, maybe you could run 2 copies of FM8. Just buy a second.
Yeah. Yeah, actually, I've never, struggled to find out how my Native Instruments licensing works. I don't know how many times I can install. So, but yeah, because I have FM8 through Complete, and I've said many times in the past, and I'll say it again. Native Instruments FM7 and FM8 are my favorite FM synths, and that's despite the fact that I own a TX81Z and the TG77. And it's solely for the TG77 is a classic for a lot of reasons, and it can do a lot of things FM8 can't. But the interface on FM8 is the best FM interface I've ever used.
And it's even better is
So-
unlike the OP6, it's still available.
It's still available, and it's $10, which even an unemployed person can afford.
True. If they don't want to eat that morning. So yeah, $10 you get the
Eating is
Native
so-
Instruments FM8, which is an excellent FM synthesizer. Yes,
It really is, and it'll load up all your DX7 sounds, TX81Z sounds, Yamaha B200 sounds.
bell noises
Nice.
forever.
Yeah, so it gave me access to a lot of the sounds my old band used because I don't have access to that keyboard, but it sounds pretty close on the FM8.
Yeah, and it's usually going for like $160, I think. So it's a huge discount. Down to $10 if you're looking
is.
for an
But
FM
it's only on
synth.
sale for this month.
Yeah.
So go get
Yeah,
it.
it's only on sale until
Is
my
it just
birthday.
through,
So you have until my
Is
birthday.
it just a plug-in boutique though, right? I think
Yeah.
Yeah,
Plug-in Alliance. I
Plug-in
think it is.
Alliance.
plug-in alliance. Oh, okay.
Yeah, so there's no real excuse not to pick it up, unless you don't want an FM synthesizer, or if you don't have a computer.
That would be a good
Yeah.
reason.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The limiting factor.
Or if your computer is a Chromebook.
Yeah. Well, yeah,
But if you have a Mac or PC, you should get this.
absolutely.
And it's not the only synth that you're going to use, but it just stands out. It does sounds that nothing else really does, and it's so worth having, and it's just so easy to use for an
And
FM.
it's- I'm
For
looking
an-
at pictures of the UI because I haven't looked at FM8 since it was FM something earlier.
FM7.
Yeah, a long time ago.
The difference is the FM7 looked more like a DX7 in its color scheme, and the FM8 looks like a little more metro.
It looks cool. I'm looking at it right now.
Sure does.
But it's just that the way that instead of using algorithms, the way that it's all laid out as a grid
Yeah.
for modulation, it's just once you get your head around it, it's just so easy to do.
It's cool.
And importantly, one thing you can't do, like you can do a feedback on every operator, which nothing else does, and none of the Yamahas do it.
Weird.
Yeah, that's pretty killer. And that price is right.
Yeah. and you'll be legal.
No,
For shame.
not that.
So, Neon Void, my first, not like the first synth I had access to was also an FM. It was a Yamaha B200.
Oh, wow.
And I remember I was like, there were a lot of other industrial bands out on Long Island, and they were all like, they couldn't figure out how we were getting our sounds because they all were in subtractive synthesis,
Right.
you know, and romplers. And yeah, FM just, it does stuff that you can't really do in other ways.
Yeah, it's cool. You know what else is cool?
No.
Mixing albums in your car.
Oh,
Ooh, yeah, we've all been there.
Right?
Yeah, that's when you're going to master and like, all right, it sounds good on my stereo, but how will it sound in my car? It sounds good on these keyboards, but how does it sound in my car? And it's like, then you realize, oh yeah, the kick isn't good. I got to redo it. If only there was a solution so you didn't have to go out to your car when it's freezing or way too hot.
Well, let me tell you, my friend, there is.
I'm listening.
Plug-in.
There's a free plugin, in fact. Free.
Ooh. As a poor person, I like free.
Exactly. Well, you're in luck, Mr. World Traveler, poor guy.
Gee willikers.
So this weird little company has come out with a thing called the Car Test plugin. Isn't that great? And yeah, it's you know, it kind of does what it says in the box. It processes your mix to make it sound like you're coming out of a car stereo. I have not tried it yet, so I don't know if you can get engine noise as one of the functions in it.
I remember throughout the pandemic, Jeff would send me things to listen to that he was working on, and I'd be like, all right, you got to wait till I go out to my car.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, there's some coolness here. I remember back in the day, like, bands would rent cars. I think there was a Toyota Corolla, just so they could hear what it sounded like in a Corolla. Right. I think specifically the like 90s hip hop acts used to do that. I thought it was kind of interesting. Basically, like, it was like the litmus test for if it would sound good. But I think you get into the situation there where you're in a space that actually can accommodate like bass boom. And as much as I think this plugin is probably a good bit of crack, I don't think you're going to be able to do that.
No,
Right.
I'm sure it's not going to be perfect, but I mean, it's an interesting idea.
Yeah. I mean, if it could put like a giant subwoofer in the trunk for me and make that actually sound great, then I'd be all right.
You know, the interesting thing to me, I guess, is that, I don't know, interesting, maybe weird, but car stereos used to be a lot more homogenous, like, and they used to kind of suck.
Yeah.
Unless you hot rodded your stereo or something, and I don't know, you know, now they sound pretty good, but they sound really different.
Yeah, I wonder if there's a function on that you can turn it on so it's like badly grounded stereo, and it like makes that high pitched squeal that like as you accelerate and slow down.
Yeah.
Those are the kind of questions I have. You know, can you change it to like, you know, Blaupunkt or Pioneer or, you know, those kinds of switches? That would be the thing, really.
I think there's back in the day, it was Alpines were real popular.
Yeah, I think they're still
Yeah,
still around.
lots of like aftermarket modifications to their cars to do.
It'd be cool if like Crutchfield started like putting like plugins for this thing. And they were like $800 each because that's what, you know, it's Crutchfield. That's my dumb joke of the day. So yeah, the free plugin of Car Test. I wonder what else you can do with it. Probably not much. Well, how can we segue into that one?
I don't know. I think you can blame Jeff. Didn't you add those two, Jeff?
I added the car test. I didn't add the Super 6. That's Andrew's
Yeah,
fault.
my fault.
Oh, it's
My
okay.
fault. So,
But
Super 6,
speaking of Super Sixes, doesn't Jeff have one?
I think he
That's right.
does. And Jeff, did you know that they just recently updated their still in beta firmware?
I heard. I haven't updated mine yet. Here's a hot take. I'll send this down a delicious tangent. MPE is a meme. It's a garbage meme, and that's all there is to it. And so I don't care if they add MPE. I don't even care if it has velocity. Velocity is not quite a meme, but it's close. MPE definitely is.
Jeff, man, you need MPE in the metaverse, dude. Come on,
That's
let's
true.
go.
How else are you going to VR with your
It's
friends?
kind of a corporate buzzword for
You
like
need-
polyphonic aftertouch.
You need exactly one velocity, and it's 127. Anything else is shit. And so I haven't done
If we're
that.
talking about
And then,
drums, yes.
what's that?
If we're talking about drums, absolutely.
Anything. Why would you want any sound at any volume other than the most it could possibly output?
Subtlety is a thing for cattle and love play.
Yeah.
Dynamics are for wieners, and I don't want them. So I don't know. The freeze delay, I guess, could be cool. I haven't looked into the binaural PWM though.
Wow. So there's nothing in
Yeah,
this. There's
somebody
nothing in this
have to-
firmware that you want.
No, nothing at all. Like they kept talking about this, and I was like, okay. I mean, sure. The Super 6 is very good, and I would actually tell anybody that I think it's actually very silly that they keep calling it beta firmware. Like it works pretty well. There are occasional weird glitches, and like sometimes you turn it on and it just doesn't work. That's the fixed version of the bug, because sometimes you would turn it on and one voice wouldn't work, but you didn't know which. So it's better that sometimes you turn it on and it just doesn't work, and then you turn it back and you power cycle and it's fine. So like that's one of the big issues with it. That happens maybe like 10% of the time. But I think, it's a pretty feature complete synth. Like all the face features of it work. Some of the stuff still working through in the beta, I think, is about like MIDI compatibility with a DAW.
That's important.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I don't know what's a DAW. So they've got some stuff there that I think that they're still working through, but
Sure.
they're adding stuff that people like kind of don't care about. Meanwhile, there's like things that people are like, hey, you should fix this, and they're not doing. I don't know. So I haven't been paying super close attention to what they're doing. I use the shit out of the synth, and I really like it, and I would recommend anyone. But the
You need a keyboard with it though, in order to really unlock its potential.
you gotta have one of those the playable fleshlights
Yep.
that says for
To
I-
rub your dead skin off of your fingertips for? Yeah.
somehow like magic, you could put one of those things in a room that a person has never been in it, and you walk back and look at it, and in 3 weeks it's like covered in hair, just because it is.
You live in a cat mansion.
Well, Catman
True.
will do that.
Yeah. So I don't know. It's this was like, I would like for them to fix the delay that they have, because the delay that they have on the Super 6 is I mean, it just isn't very good, honestly. Like it sounds good, but the problem is the level control on it is really bad. It's either inaudible or completely dominant.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know.
Well, I like MPE, and I like the fact that you don't like it because it gives me more to love.
Good. You can have.
Me and my
So-
Linstrument will be over here pitching two different notes at the same time differently.
Yeah, that's the thing that makes music better.
It really does. You don't know what the fuck you're talking about.
Can. Yeah, like MP, like, again, it's kind of like polyphonic aftertouch, and so if you use it expressively, it makes a huge difference. You know, like a couple weeks ago, I was trying to play Vangelis's Blade Runner because I'm a nerd, and there's that last note, and because I don't have a controller that can do that slide, I'm stuck on that last note because he uses the ribbon controller to like drop it down. So yeah, so you know, there's other ways to do it. I understand why Jeff feels like MP is kind of a buzzword because there are other ways to do this through MIDI or through programming.
Right.
But it's a new implementation, and either way, if it gets people excited and gets people to be more expressive in the programming, great. And I do think there are sometimes reasons to not have everything at 127. And I'd say if you're going to play like different parts, like as you're playing, if different parts need to have different volumes or different expression, like maybe some notes need to come in hard, but other notes in that same part that you're playing need to come in soft, and then you push it down with your aftertouch to bring it up. So it depends. But for drums, no, always 127.
Nope.
Always brutal.
Because you're a baby is the only reason to have it under 127.
If you're talking about drums, absolutely.
I think that the biggest advantage for MPE, at least in my opinion, and apparently I'm in the minority of people who like MPE, is it opens up new ways of interfacing with your synthesizers other than a stupid keyboard.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, and I guess the other advantage is that it has better bandwidth. Whereas if you're using a lot of expression through just standard MIDI, your MIDI slop is eventually going to slow down. And you're going to get lag or other slop effects, whereas MP should be solving that.
Do you have an MPE controller, Robin?
No. Though I'm just laughing at what's happening with X over there. No, but it's like I want a instrument at the point.
I'm bringing mine to KnobCon, so if you want to mess with it.
Because I figured that would be the good pairing. It would also make it easier to be able to utilize like the Hydrasynth and whatnot without having to use it directly.
Yeah, Dan Kushner asked me to bring my instrument with me to KnobCon so we can try it out. So it'll be available for everyone to finger, and it doesn't feel like a fleshlight. Yes.
Thank God for that.
Noise Theorem says that I agree, except no one has really made an MPE controller that isn't keyboard-like. Linstrument?
The Linstrument's not too keyboard-like.
No, it's more. It's like guitar. It's like guitar neck type. Yeah.
Looks like a guitar tab notation.
Yeah,
machine.
yeah, kinda. And also the Polyand Medusa has full MPE controllability out on it as well, and that's not at all keyboardy.
The Haken
Continuum, or whatever it's called. What is it?
Yeah.
Release the Haken.
It's keyboard-like in the sense that it's got the stripes that look like the keyboard, but it's unkeyed, and you can play it in really like very percussive kinds of ways too. I don't know, that one sort of. I could see you describing it as keys-like, I guess, but it also is like close on the other side of it.
Sorry, Jeff, I didn't mean to laugh, but unkeyed sounds like a delightful euphemism for anything that doesn't have a keyboard. I'm going to hell. I'm sorry. Anyway.
Have we exhausted the Super 6 firmware? I expect a full report.
They remove velocity from the device.
Yeah.
Well, I can understand. All right, so the one thing that Jeff was saying is like, hey, maybe they should fix something. And I understand that, the problem with bug fixing is it costs money and it's not sexy. It doesn't sell things to fix things that shouldn't have been broken.
Yep.
So from a marketing standpoint, it's like, all right, we'll pay for a programmer to fix this if we add something that we can sell. So I get that, but of course, they really need to fix this stuff.
Well, the spin doctoring is kind of the fact that they're like, this is a new feature, right? They don't they don't show you the boilerplate of all the bug fixing that probably goes on.
But since you have an existing user base, if you don't want them to turn on you, fix your bugs.
Yeah,
Right.
for sure.
Yeah. Don't be Waldorf. Fix your bugs.
Yeah. And that's the thing that does hold me back at all on the Super 6, or sort of like make me feel agitated about stuff is the things that really just and I don't know. If you're only playing the presets on the Super 6 are very good. If you know synthesis well and you have an idea in mind, I can have an idea in mind, and then I go down to the Super 6, like I want to do this thing, and it has some sort of weird bug on something that has where the response curve on one of the faders has either dead spots or things that it shouldn't behave in a certain way, where it needs to be linear, but it isn't linear, and it's stuff like that just gets frustrating with it sometimes.
Yeah, I could see that.
Especially since the real selling point of that synth is to go on synth explorations, and you want to have a smooth journey.
Yeah.
And you want anything that isn't smooth to be because you screwed up, not because the synth didn't do what it should be doing.
Yeah. But when there's these weird places in like the cross mod on it where it just like goes massive jumps, and it's not due to the nature of cross mod, it's like due to the nature of the slider that they have on it.
Yeah.
But I don't know. What you're saying about fixing things in software and free is kind of funny to me, because here's a person that's made a free granular synth.
It's got the best name ever.
Oi, Granddad!
Oi, Granddad!
Yeah,
I want to meet
I
their
know.
marketing.
And punch him in the fucking dick repeatedly.
I can't remember. There's some reason why I don't care about this synth. What is that reason?
Probably the-
I think it might
that's
be
not it.
because it isn't made for you Windows people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Screw you, Mac people.
No, I think it's charming Cockney nomenclature is perfectly fine. I think, yeah.
So yeah, it's literally called the Oi Granddad. Like Oi, comma, Granddad, exclamation point. It is a new free open source granular synthesizer plugin for Mac only. Not sorry, Christoph.
Oi!
I'm surprised I didn't go for geezer. I would have preferred
Right.
that. Oh yeah, geezer. Yeah,
So it's ugly as sin.
It looks like it was
terrible.
made in Reactor 2.
It really does.
Or like
Yeah.
synthetic.
color scheme
Yeah,
looks like
it
bark.
really does.
Oh,
But it's
It looks-
made in a modular. I think it's made in a pretty simple environment. Like it must be an accessible environment so that you can kind of make anything.
Mhm.
It's called HISC.
yeah. I don't know. The rainbow bright like Easter candy like thing is in charge here.
That
Wow.
said, they could have picked other colors.
Yes.
Sure.
The good news is it's open source, so you can just go in there and recompile it with whatever colors you fucking want to, right?
Nice.
Yeah.
Quit your bitching. Oi!
Justin.
I mean, plus it's free.
Wait.
Yeah. Oi, granddad.
Yeah, I'm going to complain about free things.
That's a spirit. Well, I mean, it's
Yeah,
kind of
I
the
mean,
nature of
well,
our
I
show.
can
We
buy
just
my
complain
money
about
back.
everything,
I was to say.
right? What else are we gonna do? Like praise something? We're gonna say something's good?
You free software, get off of my
Right?
lawn.
All right. Well, all right. So although we've done a lot of bitching, we did say that FM8 for $10 is fantastic.
That's true. Even though it's still FM synthesis, and I don't like FM synthesis.
Yeah.
So,
And I understand not liking FM. I really do.
well,
Like, I
let's talk
wouldn't want
about
to only have FM, but I'm glad that it's a toolkit in my
But
arsenal.
let's talk about granular synthesis. Speaking of irritating buzz term synthesizer styles.
Yeah, you can kick something when it's down. Let's kick some granular ass right now.
All right.
Because
Well, I mean, here's the main thing for me. Isn't Contact a granular synth? Like, don't you have to like hit a setting for it not to be a granular synth? like aren't most modern samplers really granular synths? Because we're not just like slowing down a waveform anymore. We're chucking it into grains, and that's why people like the old hardware synths, because they're just slowing down the waveform and it gets all gritty and weird and cool. And now the granular, since all like soft samplers are granular, when you slow it down, it just slows down and you don't get those artifacts.
Right. Well, I'm supposed to be harmonic slicing, right? I mean that, and I get that, and it can do really cool stuff. I just don't know. I mean, look, if you want a free one, cool. Because while I like playing with them and I like some of the sounds, you want to talk about samey. I mean, like Jesus, it's hard.
Well, the nice thing is once if you decide to get Oi Granddad, then you don't really need to get any other granular synthesizer. You're set. You don't need anything else. Because
true.
It's a granular synthesizer. They're kind of like
Well, there's one in the Iridium, but it's just a single oscillator. Right. So like that's cool for me because I can use it as part of a texture rather than like the sound.
And that's like me using the microcosm as a pedal. It's like applying a sound effect of granular versus having to deal with it in a synth. Like I don't like I'm not as familiar with like what are the best granular synths that are out there.
The one
right
you
now?
have.
Thanks, Andrew.
All right, so although they didn't make a PC version, I will say some nice things about the very affordable, because it's free, Oi Granddad.
Oi!
Oi! So, all right, so I mean, it's got 4 voices, which kind of pushes you to like, make things with 4 layers, which is how Roland Rompler synthesis works, and the Oberheim 4 voice. It has lots of modulation controls. So if you exploit it properly, it'll be great for sound design. And you won't be limited, that problem with sampling, like the old school hardware samplers, which we talked about a lot before, and now people seek out with things like the SP1200 to get that degradation of sound. Here, you don't have to worry about that stopping you from doing the thing you want to do, because it's granular synthesis it's really smooth. So it's going to open up a ton of options for you, and it's free. So it's a rabbit hole you could go through unless you can't afford a Mac because you're unemployed and you have to be a PC person.
Yeah, there was one company, to answer your question, that I used to use. I don't think they're around anymore. I can't find it.
So for me, the granular synth, like my go-to it's usually a Reactor Ensemble.
Sure. So,
because that was the first thing that I had that really did it in a way that you could really modulate it. Whereas it's so in the older versions of Contact, you actually had to like check a box to make it not do granular synthesis so that you could get that kind of degradation that you're looking for with like slowing the waveform down, and that limitation of like with the hardware synth, like if you were sampling at 44.1K, you usually couldn't go up that many octaves because it just couldn't play it fast enough because of the limitations of the hardware. And with granular, it doesn't care. So it's unlimited. You can take one sample, you can map it 88 keys. And but with hardware samplers, you could usually go down infinitely, but you could only go up a certain amount. And it aliased, so it introduced noise as it did it. And when a lot of that noise is not good noise. It's frequently like you can see you'll see like a spike at around 10 or 12K. And I know on 9 Inch Nails Downward Spiral, there's like this noise in one of the tracks whenever the sample kicks in and out from that kind of like aliasing from the sampler. And with granular, you don't have that.
I can't find the company. I don't think they're around anymore. But I think what's most interesting about granular is that people are using it for effects. And so 2 effects that I really like are Portal and then the new EFX Fragments. And Portal is freaking way out there. I love it. But it's also like just an uncontrollable lunatic. But it's fun.
And like hardware wise, there's not, like the Iridium has an implementation of it, as Noise Theorem says. There's the Tasty Chips GR1 granular synthesizer, which I know that Information Tray has one of those. He got one, and then I don't think I've ever seen him use it because he's done, stopped streaming to take care of babies and stuff. So I might, like, I'm gonna see him next week, so maybe I'll see if I can borrow it from him.
Borrow
Dude, you're not
The
doing
black
anything with it.
Yeah, totally.
Black box has the 1010 black box has a granular synth in it
Yeah.
too. But Robin, to answer, I mean, back to your question about like which ones are good. The thing about granular synthesis is that I mean, so it's basically subtractive synthesis at its core. And the grain is either a single cycle waveform or a looping waveform that sort of like behaves like a wavetable. And oftentimes what happens with granular synthesis is if you make the grains really small, oftentimes everything sounds very the same.
Mm-hmm.
So you could make two patches from two very different samples and you get this really homogeneous kind of sound because the grains are just really small. It's essentially like having this like microwave form. And if you make them really big, so you get this sort of like looping sound in the grain, and there's things around that. So what happens with a lot of granular synthesis is that you wind up having to operate within the constraints of how granular synthesis works. And so there's not a huge amount of variation. Like maybe one has a better filter that you like, or maybe one has a better sort of effects section that you like, or you like the way that the envelopes are implemented. There's more of them or something, but really they're all, it's fairly generic because you're not, like the thing that makes a Moog sound like a Moog is the oscillator and the filter.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing that makes the Oberheim sound like the Oberheim is the SEM. It's the chips and the filter and the guts of the thing, and it just, you lose that with the granular sense. So you just.
Yeah, I mean, what you're really looking for is access to the parameters you need, like the crossfade amount between the grains, grain size, and then a lot of it's just modulation. Like that repetitive sound of it in and out, that's something that's adjustable.
Yep.
So in the end, though, what could really make the difference for a hardware granular is it goes back to the same thing. It's like, all right, so you've got if you just think of the grain as your oscillator, then you're back to what's the quality of your filter. And your filter, and again, the modulation. Like you can just take a word, and then you can just scan up and down that word for different tonality, adjusting the size of the grain and the speed of the grain, and you can do really weird things and make these landscapes with it. But again, like everything else, it comes down to how you modulate.
Yeah, and you can even set the modulation to do things where instead of it scanning straight across like that sample will bounce around, or you can tell it where to go. Like in Reason's grain synth is very cool in the fact that you can you can assign out exactly where you want those, what grains you want to pull and stuff like that as you play the instrument, and so you can get really nerdy deep with it.
Yeah, the first one I used was Reactor's Travelizer, and so there was a knob for every parameter. And it was really programmable, so you could just do kind of anything with it. And of course, because it's a modular environment, you can add whatever filter or whatever other modulator you want to it. But here, you don't have to do all that because they've done it for you for free, unless you're a PC person.
In which case, you just got to get a Mac.
Yeah.
So that's the Oi Granddad! Granular synthesizer. For free, if you're a Mac user.
For free.
But it's open source, which means, Christoph, you just got to recompile it under your Windows kernels.
Yeah. Now, I used to have a development environment for Windows installed, but that was employed Christoph. Unemployed Christoph has forgotten about that. So, and I do have I could always compile under Linux, but it won't run under Linux.
Why not?
Oh, because the objects won't support the audio system.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Just on principle, just things won't run.
Well, there's that.
It just really
unless you have a Wine setup, and I've just never really gotten into Wine. Although our occasional viewer, Zen Linux, he runs, he does, he has a Wine setup, and he runs Windows plugins under Wine in Linux and has good results.
I just use Wine and DOSBox to play games.
Yeah.
Hey, Noise Theorem, thank you for subscribing. Wow, we rate.
Awesome.
He likes our talking heads.
All right, it's good talk.
And I'll be seeing Noise Theorem at NobCon.
All right. Well, all right. So since he subscribed, should we reward him with some bad news?
Yeah, that
Yes.
sounds like a great idea. And actually, it was funny because I was just talking to him about this the other day. Noise Theorem and I are pals, so we chit chat outside of the internet. Or actually, no, in the internet. No, we chat once a year. We talk to each other at NobCon. So yeah, speaking of bad news, so this just in last week, WM Devices, Weapons of Mass Devices, are closing up shop. They are a Eurorack manufacturer. We generally don't cover Eurorack on this show because we wouldn't stop if that was the case, and the show would be 16 hours long. And we would just be talking about the exact same 4 filters over and over and over, fucking again.
But another company put out that filter.
Yeah, exactly. This one's got a different paint job.
Different.
So yeah, WMD, which is a manufacturer of fine Eurorack gear, friendly bunch of people. Every time I've talked to them, they've been really cool. Unfortunately, they are shutting down. They're saying that it is mostly because of the inability to get components right now.
I wonder too, like, this is the sort of canary in the coal mine a little for modular. I mean, I think that, you know, it was kind of a craze. It was kind of a thing. I don't want to use the F word, but it, you know, maybe it was a fad. I don't know. Like, I think it's great. I love it and everything. I feel like people were hysterical about it, and a lot of people like bankrupted themselves for. They should have just focused on Pokemon cards.
Yeah,
or
Beanie Babies.
Places.
Magic the Gathering, something. I don't.
Maybe not, baby.
Well,
Yeah.
I don't. So, and I'll say why I don't. So there are some. So I'm not a modular guy, but I mean, in theory, I like modular, but I'm perfectly happy to use VCV rack or reactor. You know, because I can get there. I just view everything as tools, and if I can get it through whatever tool, I got it. So I understand the appeal of granular, and I totally understand the appeal of a tactile interface. So, and it's very expensive, and there's a lot of hipsters in it. We can make fun of their plant videos with the modulars, but granular's great, and it's really brought in so much excitement back into the synth world. And even I don't want to listen to your modular synth jam, but I'm glad that people are trying and they're getting interested in electronic music and doing stuff, as long as I don't have to listen to it. So anyway, so we all know that, just like, you know, we all know, like, some vegans are great, and then other vegans are like the nightmare vegan you can't invite to a party. And it's this, you know, it's like that old joke, how do you find a vegan at a party? Don't worry, they'll tell you. So, but we know vegans that aren't like that, and they're annoyed by those same people. And it's the same for modular people.
Yeah, back in the 2000s, it was people that microbrewed. Like, I got cornered by so many fucking microbrew dudes that.
Let me tell you about my beer.
Let me tell you about my like making beef jerky in my basement or whatever.
Oh
the
man,
fuck.
I got these special hops from Egypt. Nobody cares.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, please stop talking. I'll do it. I mean, there was a girl over here and you scared her away. I hate you. So yeah, I totally get that. So anyway, so some modular people are completely insufferable, and there are people like they get into they have their own, like, you know, their Facebook groups or like their forums or whatever, and some people's like, they'll ban people for talking about modules that are using digital components. Like, some people wanted to, it's like they feel like it's got to be all like analog components or analog chips, but if there's anything digital in it, it's like, get out of here. That's not true analog. That's not what we're about. So those people aren't affected by the
Well,
short.
you know what? Maybe if they don't like digital, they should get the fuck off the internet and go back to the Victorian internet and
Yeah.
send each other fucking telegrams.
Here's your
Yeah,
fucking
with their
abacus.
vacuum tubes. All vacuum tubes and pipes.
Let's go full fucking steampunk on these motherfuckers.
Anyway, so as I'm saying, so like, it's really like some of the best modules are completely digitals. They're basically system on a chip, and they give people like these incredible oscillators, where you can do like some of the stuff that Arturia put into the MicroFreak came from modules first. It doesn't matter how you get it, just give me the results. Plug this in and give me like the LFO depth that I want, and it comes out. And I don't care if you did it through a chip or if you did it through, some kind of weird math processing digital. I don't care. Just do it. But some people care, some people don't. And obviously, it's a lot easier to just program a chip to do like 100 functions than to, put up, 90 to 110 components on a board that's just generating a ton of heat and creating a lot of problems. So there's, I don't know, 12,000, 50 million people making synth modules now.
Well, now 14
because that is the hit barrier.
14,999,999 with
Yeah.
WMD closing down.
But don't get me wrong, this was a bigger manufacturer, but the chip shortage is real. So I made the mistake that I still am on Facebook, and I'm in some like synth groups and Behringer groups, and every week there's somebody saying that the chip shortage isn't real, and they should just the RAM chips are available, so I don't understand why Behringer can't get these chips, or isn't putting out the synths that they promised, and that's not the reason. But it's that Behringer, came up with a whole prototyping environment based on 2 ARM chips, which before the pandemic were plentiful, cheap, and really powerful. And you can't just, when you develop for a chipset like that, you can't just port it to another chipset. And the problem is these chips are so great that they're used by cars like Toyota, Lexus, and if you're trying to sell a $49 synth or a $99 synth, that means that chip costs much less than that. And what's holding up that production is you can't get the chips. Well, Toyota isn't selling cars that go for like 30 to 80 grand because they can't get that chip. So they'll outbid you. They can spend $2,000 on a $20 chip just so they can sell the rest of that car, and they can pass that cost down to the consumer. But that synth that Behringer promised for $49, they can't make it $20.49, and then when the chip shortage ends, bring it back down to $49. So they've got to wait until they can get those chips. And so there's a lot of chips. The chip shortage is still very real. It's still holding up a lot of things. And although synths are everything to us, it's not as important as microwaves and cars and other things that sell a lot more than synths do. And so you're just not going to compete to get those chips. And a lot of people are suffering because they can't get them, and there's a lot of reasons. It's a complex problem. We've talked about in this show before, but there's a lot of reasons why you can't get those chips. Like the invasion of Ukraine has cut back neon production, and neon is used in making chips. And some of the big manufacturing plants were destroyed in natural resources, and there's still staffing problems because of COVID and other things. So, and it created such a backlog in demand, backlog in these things. Even when they make the chips, they can't make enough. And and there's also politics in it. Like Trump put in tariffs against we're not going to import these Chinese chips, so that people have to buy American chips. Except for we don't make those chips, and it takes years to build a manufacturing facility and billions, and nobody wants to invest in it if they think it's not a good long-term investment. And you don't know if it's going to be a good long-term investment. And to make those chips in America costs even more because we pay our workers more, and you have to provide all these things. So if Singapore gets theirs up faster, or Malaysia, they're going to undercut you, and then you're not going to make any money. So it's a really complicated problem, and lots of boutique manufacturers. And this is a bigger manufacturer, but they're not shipping 100,000 units. So they can't compete when it comes to getting these chips. So they just get crushed. So it's sad because it's their hopes and dreams, and these are passion projects. I mean, very few people are getting super rich off of modular. Like maybe Eurorack has made a lot of money, and Doper and Doper and a few other companies. But generally, they're just doing it because they love it, and maybe they're making a little money. I'll bet you a lot of them are making Like they're not quitting their day jobs. And so we're going to keep seeing it happening, especially with anything that relies on digital chips that are in short supply.
Yeah. It's definitely I feel like this is kind of like the closing of the current second age of synthesizers, second golden age.
Well, it's like an explosion. Yeah. And now that explosion's ending, and there's going to be a culling. Yeah. I don't think modular's dead, but there's going to be a culling because like everybody's been putting out modules. Right. Because it was really easy.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, you can just program an Arduino to become a module.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, if you can get the chips.
I mean, to clarify my position, I wasn't saying that there hasn't been a lot of great innovation or that it hasn't fueled other synthesizer manufacturers. I totally agree that it has. But I do feel that humans are fallible in the sense that they follow trends sometimes, regardless of what the quality is of something or not.
Oh yeah, and I didn't say that's what you were saying. I'm sorry if it came out that way.
No, not at all. I was sort of like thinking if I could refine my statement, what would I say? But yeah, definitely. It's been really cool. I mean, it's been, and look, I'm not even against it, and I hope it continues forever. Of course, nobody likes, modular fanatics and trolls and stuff. But no, if it makes people happy and it does cool things, then Viva Modular.
And I've said this to Jeff before, but I'll say here, we are absolutely living in the golden age for making electronic music. Maybe it's a lot harder to reach an audience, but we've never had access to so many cheap, affordable, or free tools as we do now, and so much variety. I mean, all of us, we're obsessed with like these synths that were made in the 70s and 80s, but we're so much luckier to have the access to everything that we have access to now. On top of our access to, those synths or, recreations of those synths, virtualizations of those synths. And we're in a modular boom, and maybe that modular boom is coming to an end, and it's going to cull the number of manufacturers. And that's sad. And there's a lot of things that we look back on and it's like, I wish I could get that unit again. And they're not coming back. So that's going to be the real thing that's lost. Is somebody had some really weird ideas, and some of those like things that had these limited runs are going to be sought after and treasured later. And then others are just going to be garbage in a box.
Yeah. So. I think the semi-modular stuff is kind of the sweet spot. Like I had some, I sold it, I bought some of it back. And I think the full modular, I was seeing, Wambra and Noise Theorem talk about it in chat. Like you do wind up getting like such choice overload.
Yeah.
But it is pretty cool that, with like the handful of the Moog semi-modulars that I've got now, that like, oh, am I just like one LFO short? Do I really just feel like I need one more LFO? Oh, that's cool. And with like the Mavis, you get the wave shaper. Run any of them through that. Like it's fully modular is just not practical because I like polysynths so much. But I definitely see, where sometimes it's nice to be able to route the thing over here to the device over here. That can,
and to have a visual representation. Like I often brag about how with my Kurzweil, I can do modular synthesis, but I can't see it. I have to have it in my head what the modulations are, or I have to go menu diving through to see what I did.
There's a lot of polysynths that have those kinds of
modulars.
things.
There's a visual representation, just like Reason, where you can see exactly what you did, and that's great.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and it's sad to see this kind of stuff, but it's kind of inevitable right now given the current situation. And this might be going on for decades. This might be going on for a long time. And Noise Theorem and I were talking the other day about the whole thing that what I think is going to be happening is you're going to start seeing a lot more value added stuff put into the hardware that already exists.
Oh yeah, I can see that.
We can see it already with like what Akai did with those with their plugins that they put into the NPCs. And, we're going to start seeing that kind of thing, I think, because if they can't make the hardware, they still need to be relevant somehow. And they still have to be able to make money to pay their employees and stuff like that. So they might just start pushing things out and like, you're going to have to buy if you want this kind of thing, you have to buy this plug-in kind of system or something like that. And I think we're going to start seeing more of that, especially in some of the higher end synths that can handle that kind of processing power. I wouldn't be surprised if it comes down to like Novation might kick into that kind of world.
Mm-hmm.
And then we're also going to see a lot more software synths as well.
Yeah, like this one.
Which one's that?
The
The one that we just tangented off of for like 45 minutes.
Oh, hey, look at that. Wouldn't you know it? The Versen Terraverse. The new Terra Pro. God, this is a terrible naming conventions. The Versen Terraverse Terra
Right,
Pro.
for a terrible environment.
The fuck? A new morphing synthesizer app for iOS and macOS. And not Windows.
And not Android either.
What are those?
Yeah. Did you ever see Star
Nope.
Wars?
Those were just droids. They weren't androids.
Oh, I was talking about the Mandela effect the other day. What color is C-3PO's leg?
Which one?
That's exactly it. Nobody realizes that one of his legs is silver.
Yeah, I knew that.
Of course you would.
Bitch, it was his left leg, too. Do you know why?
Oh my God, please tell us. I won't be able to sleep if you don't tell me now.
Prepare to stay awake, because I don't know. So yeah, the Terraverse, which I didn't even look at this really. I apologize.
No,
Justin,
I'll
you
take.
tossed
I mean,
this
I
one
posted it, so I'll take.
It's on you.
I did. I own some of their stuff. I got in this big sort of iOS kick, if you recall, a few years ago,
yeah.
and I found their the larger version of this, and also like the I think it's a Cube synth is the one that I used quite a lot. But Terra Pro is their sort of real big powered thing, and then this is sort of like a light sort of front end. I mean, it's basically like a Rompler from space. I think it sounds really cool. I think it's weird, and if you're already in this iOS music space, it's pretty cheap, right, to buy these apps on iOS. So it's kind of good fun.
So did you pick it up then?
I did, and I haven't gotten badly past playing with the presets. But yeah, it's just cool. It sounds really weird. I think it's cool that companies are making I don't want to say less expensive, less complicated sort of front ends for things, but I think that's sort of a realization when you're dealing. And I know they make it for Mac OS too, but I guarantee you most of the people are running this in iOS. Is that I feel like super complexity isn't maybe always where the iOS apps should be. I think also tactile interaction is really kind of really important, more important.
This kind of reminds me of some of the interfaces that I've seen in the oh shit, what is the name of that company that did the BBC Orchestra plugin? Spitfire.
Oh, Spitfire? Yeah, it's the new trend. Actually, Arturia kind of did it too, where they're like, here's a picture of a cloud, or here's a picture of a, robotic pigeon. I can't explain to you what it does exactly, but if you rub its belly, it'll do something. I don't know.
Everything okay at home there, Justin?
Yeah. I got lots of flying rats here in Chicago. I'm used to them. No, it's mostly just I don't want to say gimmicky, but it's just kind of it's on trend.
Yeah, but it's also kind of like a simplification of the interface too. Like there's not much.
Yeah.
Like it's almost like you said, it's almost like a Rompler in a way. That doesn't give you a whole lot of options on it, and that's okay. You don't always need a whole lot of options to get certain things going.
Yeah, the people that did this right, which probably went a little deeper than just a sort of player, was Arturia with the Analog Lab, because they were like, here are the things you can tweak on it. If you want to do any more, you got to buy the plugin, and you can link out to the plugin from Analog Lab. You know, like a lot of people, I started with Analog Lab and was like, oh, okay, I got to buy this plugin now. So that marketing sure is how it worked. But it's also kind of interesting that they're like, here's a hobbled version of this. Like, you know, but if you're serious, you know, come and buy the full
Roland
thing.
does that with their Zeta synth as well. They give you a hobbled version for free, but if you want to really edit, then you have to pay for it.
Got it.
Of course. Mm-hmm.
That makes sense. Makes a lot of marketing sense, actually.
It does.
Well, and speaking of marketing, our good friends at Cherry Audio, unofficial
I wish they
sponsors of
were
our
friends.
station, of
You would think they sponsor
you would think
us.
so, because we sure do pimp the shit out of them.
We're always saying nice things about them, but everybody does.
Just because they just make good
Yeah,
stuff.
they kind of.
They do, and affordably. So it's just like they're just likable.
Indeed. And they're pleased to announce the release
Also
of
with-
the Miniverse module collection, an expansion of the Miniverse Virtual Instrument, into 14 flexible modules for use with their Voltage modular platform.
Most importantly, the test tone,
Yes.
because you need that in a digital
I
environment.
love me a good
440,
test
yeah.
tone.
Yeah.
When you need to know where your A is, you know.
I mean, I do use the test tone on my Behringer, my Bogue,
It's
because you have to tune.
yeah, it's probably the only thing that consistently works well.
Yeah, I could see that. So I mean,
I-
it's
it's
definitely
funny 'cause
temperature sensitive.
Oh, it's
That was a thing
But
back
so are
in the
mini
day.
minis.
I mean, I remember constantly having to hit the tune button on a couple
yeah.
of synths back in the day.
And on the Bogue, there's no tune button. You've got to do it by
oh
ear.
yeah.
God.
But
Does it
I
have,
haven't
like,
had
a
the problems that
fine-tune-
your friend had where he tossed out the
Well,
window.
that was the biggest problem, was that he tossed it out the window, I think.
I've never seen a synth get any better from being tossed out the window.
I'm sure he feels it's better.
Yeah, I'm sure Womber feels. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, Womber.
I really don't
Womber. I'm
think
sorry, that wasn't Womber. That was Callus. Callus lives on an edge that most mere mortals cannot. You know, he had his. I think it was he had a K2000 or a K2600 that he would
Okay.
literally like sit his beer like right on top of the thing, like teetering madly, about to fall into the key bed at any given moment. And dude would like chain smoke around all of his shit, and you just see like the ash like falling out into like the key bed and stuff, and it's just
If anyone here doesn't know, the K2600 cost an arm and a leg when it came
Yeah.
out. So, and it's also, I love my Kurzweils, but I would not tour with them. They are sensitive. They break.
Mhm.
You know, if you really got a baby.
oh yeah,
And they are babying, but I would never risk it.
yes.
You know, and I've destroyed a Kurzweil, so I really know. And that's just a terrible risk. to
Oh
take.
yeah. So that was just kind of like every time I would tune in to watch Callus, it was always like, oh God, you know that like the 30 of the synth nerds that are watching there are like their buttholes are making a clenched fist during the entire thing because they're waiting
I
for
feel
something
like
like that to happen.
I think there's a market for synth edgelords, and I think we should make like perfect like paper mache replicas of synths and like go all P Townsend on them at the end.
There's a guy who makes miniatures of synths.
I've seen this.
Like really, really small, and they look like you can't tell the difference of them. So he'll post the pictures, and
Wait.
nobody realizes what it is at first, and says, "Oh my God, it's like a miniature." Yeah.
So are they're SMOL?
Yes.
Is that what you're saying?
They are that
Yeah.
tiny.
Oh, God.
But yeah, and of course, you know, I've never seen him dump his beer on the K2000. I've never seen like them come to damage. but him opening the apartment window, scaring the shit out of his cat, and yeeting the fucking Bogue out the window of the 3rd-story apartment was.
No, and we are still talking about it.
Yeah.
So he got some.
Yeah.
I like he can tell the Kurzweil to hold his beer.
It really does.
It literally does.
Well, it does have a slot for it, but you're supposed to put floppy disks in.
Oh.
That's the greatest. That Novell support call is the greatest.
But anyway, the Miniverse. The Miniverse module. So the Miniverse was the virtual instrument they came out with just a few months ago. Which was like, they call it like their big bang of synths. It was this very nice, large, like Mini Moog sounding, obviously, synth. And now they broke all those pieces down into the modular bits that they have set up on their Voltage modular platform. You have oscillator, filter, glide, mixer, contour, noise, VCA, and of course the tuner.
So, and to be clear, the Miniverse is like their Mini Moog clone. And, you know, the one thing that really blew me away about the Bogue is that oscillator section is just really rich, especially before it tunes up or warms up. You know, the wash you can get out of it is amazing. So this thing is ripe for modular use. And so this is another exciting development from Cherry Audio.
Exciting indeed.
Yeah. I own their VM900 collection, and I adore it. It's wonderful.
So I have Voltage Modular. I don't know if I've got any collections for it. I have a few Cherry Audio synths, and I still have not gotten their Oberheim 4-voice or 8-voice because I'm still thinking about getting the GeForce one.
You want my humble opinion? I think the GeForce one is better.
I know the GeForce one is better. It's just a lot more money. Otherwise, it's hands down the GeForce.
Money. Yeah, way more.
Yeah, if I was a working person, I'd own it.
Well, now's your chance to get the Voltage, the Miniverse Voltage, because it is on sale right now for $39. For 39 of your Earth dollars.
And then you can go on modular with it.
You could get all modular up in that shit.
And unlike real modules, you don't have to wait on the chips as long as you already have a computer. And you can save your work and come back to it later, and it'll sound the same.
Yep. So check that shit out. It's really cool.
Yeah.
So Robin, what's new? You've been kind of quiet tonight.
The last things have been modular, which are kind of out of my realm. So
you have don't you have a Mother 32?
I do. It still doesn't get a whole lot of use. I've been focused on other things.
Yeah, I understand. Like making music and not just like tuning knobs and plugging things into.
And that's exactly what I do. I just play with the sounds. I very rarely make any music.
In fairness, after GSG did their modular day, it did motivate me to plug the DFAM back in and play with that. So that was good, but it's still the realization of at most dealing with semi-modular is good, but it's not my bread and butter.
What I love about my favorite technique with the DFAM is sampling it into the rhythm. Yes. So generally what I use my DFAM at this point right now is I will make up some cool drum patches, and then I'll just sample them into the rhythm and then turn it back off. So it's really good for that, I think.
So there's a guy I've seen do really cool things with the DFAM. So the channel used to be called Jeff Makes Noise, and then he changed to JB Noise. I think now it's Cat Mansion.
Yeah.
So, but outside of that,
tell me more about
I think he has an identity crisis.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I mean, I remember he made a video, and I played it on my broadcast once, and it was really cool. But for me, it doesn't really appeal to me, and I would do exactly what Andrew does. Was I would just sample it and then mutilate those samples into something I could use, and only play back at 127 velocity.
Right.
But of course,
All 7 bits.
The DFAM is
Tony Custom.
DFAM's kind of weird, to be honest, and so is the Mother 32 in its own way. But the DFAM, I guess actually a lot of the Mother stuff has sort of like non-standard, or maybe not necessarily non-standard because some of the things don't have a standard, but it's uncommon implementations of things. So the idea that an envelope can either be sort of like a rising or a falling envelope, and that noon is sort of like no envelope is kind of a weird thing to get your head around. And then the I don't know, like they're not really like ADSR envelopes. There's just weird stuff about some of the.
That's much more Kurzweil.
Yeah, it's just kind of peculiar the way that it's implemented. It's kind of peculiar the way that it's laid out. And the thing about the DFAM is, despite it being relatively sort of like low powered, like it doesn't have a lot of breadth of what it can do.
Right.
It does it so differently than other things that it takes like a disproportionately high amount of time to learn it. But once you do learn it, you can do some crazy stuff with it. There's a lot of overlap in the sonic territory of like the Pro 3 and the DFAM.
Right.
Especially if you just want this like real gnarly, chaotic, doomy sounding stuff. Which yes, I do want that very much.
Oh yeah.
So
And that's why I sample the shit out of it. Is like it's not because it's like it's useless to me. It's just that like I want to have more than one drum sound coming on on a track kind of thing. And so that's why I'll be like, okay, here's my kicks and here's my snares and that kind of stuff, and I can really dig into and do the sound design stuff and not worry about futzing about with the weird anticlimactic sequencer.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's this chat. Sorry, I'm blind. I don't have my glasses. I got to lean in here. Wyver. I probably got it wrong twice. I think you're right. You do have to learn any synth that you get, but most synths by and large, they have a fairly shared language of user interface.
Thank you, Dave Smith.
Yeah, good on you. Thank you for making the profit. There's a more common language among a lot of them, and the Mother 32 and the DFAM specifically sort of like lack that language. Like weirdly, the subharmonicon is more standard in terms of like just the way that you approach the synthesizer, which is very weird because it's the least normal synthesizer of the lot, but it's more sort of straightforward than those.
It's better labeled than the other ones for sure.
Yeah, it's the only one that I like. It's cool, but you gotta want to make subharmonicon music with it. And if you don't want to make subharmonicon music with it, like, sorry, it sucks. I don't miss it.
Having never used the subharmonicon, I can say I still do not understand it.
Having used the subharmonicon, I can still say I don't quite understand it.
And Jeff went to great lengths to try to explain it to me, and I'm still like, nope, I don't know.
The cool thing about the subharmonicon is you can still have fun with it without having no idea what the fuck you're doing.
Yeah.
And that's a good synth, because I tend to deal, tends to be my modus operandi with most of my gear is I barely know what the fuck I'm doing. I'm just hanging on by the seat of my pants. And if I'm having fun with it, cool. But if I can like take it out of the box, plug it in, and start flowing with it, all right, cool. This is a good synth. If I have to stop and ruin my flow in order to like read a manual on like how to do things like play a note or like how many menus do I have to dive into, close a filter, then I'm not gonna click with that one.
I think in fairness too, it's like I actually do. I kind of forgot until recently how much I do enjoy using the DFAM. I just also realized it's not fitting with the style of music that I've been doing lately. So it's more like I enjoy it like off on its own. I don't stream with it. I don't like compose with it. It is usually just like my own personal exploration of things. And like when I can limit it to that, then it's extremely enjoyable. For anything that's massive, I'll just go watch Woke Ass Messiah do amazing things with a DFAM and just be happy watching that.
One thing you might want to try, Robin, with yours is turning the 2 oscillator envelopes basically off for the VCO envelope. Just set those essentially just to the noon setting, and then turn everything else just kind of like wide open until it just like plinks and plonks at you. But you could actually do some really interesting kind of what will sound like, I guess, kind of like plucky, almost bell-like ambient atmosphere and things like that.
That would work.
You can do some pretty interesting things there, especially if you've got something else that can quantize the pitches coming into it.
I will try that.
And you get these kind of like they don't sound like FM bells, but like the subtractive version of that is kind of what you can do with it.
Cool.
Yeah, the matriarch is awesome, Noise Theorem.
Yeah, it's a neat thing. And finally tonight, who here remembers the Nectar pads?
Nope.
No.
Yeah, I know.
Yep.
I totally apparently didn't either drove through the stop sign, and I don't remember this thing.
This was
And I was rummaging looking for news for this week, and I'm
slow
like,
news week.
what?
So this thing came out a number of years ago. The Nectarine by the company Nectar, and they spelled it Nektarine to match their groovy name. And basically it was kind of like this like synth, like software drum machine kind of thing that you would use a piece of hardware to help you control it and stuff like that.
But it's cooler than that.
That's
though.
that's how it got started. But now it's
Sure.
Go ahead.
Well, no, I mean, one quick commentary. I don't own one of these. Apparently, the pads are really good. Like, they kick the hell out of Machine. I have an MK3, and so that makes me sad. But, I mean, I know you have the Nectar, Andrew, and, I mean, their ability to go into detail to control DAWs and other apps is pretty badass. They're pretty good at that. But what I thought that was novel about this, and because I'm a longtime Arturia Spark fan, which I'm pretty sure they've let that thing out to pasture at this point as a product, is that you can use all of your built-in drum modules or samplers, because basically, so if you run it in a DAW, there's a standalone version of the software. If you run Nectarine 2.5 in a DAW, you can then run other drum plugins inside of that plugin. It's very meta, right? So you've got sort of plugins inside of plugins.
Inception.
And for me,
Yes.
I use specialized stuff like, what is it called? It's made by Rob Pappin, Punchbox. And because they for bass punch, it's like the absolute best. But it's kind of a pain, right? Because I've got other sort of ways to create drums, and then I've got to use this standalone punch box on a keyboard. And so to me, this makes perfect sense. You could put all kinds of stuff inside of this. Now, of course, it's probably it's probably a little bit resource intensive because you're like stacking up VSTs inside of one VST inside of a DAW. But I still think it's cool.
Yeah, and being able to like stack, was it 16 different instruments at the same time?
Which takes to my R8 pace.
Yeah. I mean, if you're a Reason user, Andrew, you're probably more used to this kind of like modularity or sort of lateral thinking about plugins. But that's just not something that usually goes on like with Logic or even Studio One. So I think
and I think cool. It's interesting. And I looked at this thing when it first came out, but it didn't really speak to me at the time. And I'm looking at it again right now, and I'm feeling a little bit differently about it. It's kind of So it's like I like the fact that it wraps around whatever you put into it. So it's not like you're not using like an exclusive, like it's only works with this kind of, drum thing and stuff like that. It's kind of like the
Right.
the Presonus, what was that thing called? Brain fart. It's getting late. I'm not thinking as much. I even have one. Shit. The Atom. The Presonus Atom.
Yeah.
Which is like their little
Yeah.
drum pad
Yes,
controller
Atom.
thing. Which is okay. I have one, and I think I would rather have this instead, in all honesty.
Yeah, I mean, this for those who just want to get started. I mean, it's a low price point. It's $350. It does have built-in kits and stuff. Like, if that's all you want to do with it. I mean, because the space it might be competing in is like MPC,
Right.
maybe Studio, or some of the sort of Fruity Loops controllers. So it's in a weird space. It's way cheaper, obviously, at $350 than any of the Native Instrument stuff. So.
And if you wanted to get $350 to pay for that, you could sell me your Op6.
I don't have an Op6.
Bam! I looped it back to the
Look
beginning.
at you.
That was good.
That was-
well done, sir. Between Jeff's segues and your outros, I think we're in good shape.
And with that is another exciting episode of Tangents.
We did it.
We'd like to thank everybody for tuning in. We're here every other week because every week is painful and difficult for us because we are not spring chickens, and obviously we would not have
Everything hurts.
Yeah, and everything hurts and we want to die. And the show would be not as exciting because we'd all be dead.
Well, like,
Depends on your
less
parallax,
exciting.
I guess,
don't know.
right?
If it's more exciting when we're dead, we are.
That's true. Good point. So let's not die.
Luckily, we're the only show on the internet, so what
That's
are you gonna
true.
do about it?
I know what we should raid to somebody, another non-existent show on the internet. So let's see who we've got up here. I've got Zen Modern Life. I've got Octonode. I've got Killer Bee. My personal favorite is the live streaming of Baby Owls on Hoot House Livestream.
I was very lucky. I got to see an owl fly by me when I was out in California about a month.
Oh yeah, we get them in the backyard.
neat.
You know, I can hear them around where I live, but I never see them. And this, I just saw it fly by, and it's so distinct.
Oh yeah.
It was amazing.
We've had a number of bald eagles around here lately, and lots of buzzards, which are always kind of turkey buzzards.
Do you ever get
Yeah.
wild turkeys, Andrew? I know when I was living in Ohio, like this entire, I don't know what the term is, gaggle flock, whatever they are, like landed in my backyard for a
Yeah,
minute. And
I
then
think
just
they're
took
called
off.
butterball, a butterball of turkeys.
Only by a carnivore like yourself, I think.
So in southern New York, there's a lot of wild turkeys as well.
In Kentucky, there's wild turkey whiskey. And it kind of tastes bad.
It tastes like regret.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of wild turkey. Not on the list of fun things.
No, it's not really
No,
a top
it's
shelf
barely
liquor,
a bottom
man.
shelf liquor. It's,
So you drink that because something.
Yeah.
You've got to.
you got to drink and you got to forget
something.
something.
Is coming that you need to drink a lot to do, and you're out of money.
What was it? Oh, what movie was that? Was that Thelma and Louise? She was buying the little, like, mini plain bottles of wild turkey.
Yeah, I think so.
I believe in the Punisher movie, he was drinking wild turkey as well.
Nice. My favorite ever is drink references from the Blues Brothers, and that's a reference to
Oh, yeah.
Night Train. He's like Night Train. You know, I forget. I'm definitely paraphrasing, but it was like, you know, it ain't what it used to be or something. And when I was 17, there was like a local like bodega near my house, and they had this dusty old bottle of Night Train, and I was like, you know, when I'm 21, I'm coming back in here to buy this bottle because it's been sitting here forever. And unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on your perspective on my liver, it actually the store closed before I got a chance to be 21. So,
Aw.
oh well.
Thanks for the kind words, Synthlab.
Yeah, glad we can sing thee to thy slumber with our soothing voices and our stories of
Our
bodegas
banter.
and moldy old bottles of Night Train. All right, where we going, guys?
Up to you.
Octonode, the Owls, Zen Modern Life, or Killer Bee?
Owls.
Owls.
Do owls.
We're ruining.
I'm just gonna say the owls are not what they seem.
We'll have an excellent
We
superb
will,
owl
indeed.
party.
All right, everybody. I am so sorry if you wanted music. I kind of feel like this is like we're like NPR and we're about to sign off for the night.
But we're not doing whisper talk.
Yeah, right. Instead of
You're listening to
you're
NPR.
listening to NPR. We are set up to raid over to Hoot House live stream. Enjoy the owls. Hopefully they're in there. I don't know. I haven't checked. Everybody have a great night. Robin, Justin, Christoph, everybody. Who are you? I don't even know. Jesus, Jeff.
Wambra.
Thanks for
Synthlab.
joining us. Thanks for hanging out with me, guys. Wambra, always a pleasure. Noise Theorem, thank you very much.
Noise Theorem. Wiver.
Wiver, everybody for participating
Dustin.
and keeping us in conversation this evening. We appreciate it. Enjoy the owls. Hugs and kisses. Good night.